afternoon, and it will be in the way that Björn and Michael will give some reflection they have from their perspective. First, some short introduction, what context they are in when they come, so you know that, and you also. And then some short reflection based on that context, some interaction, and after that we'll open up for a dialogue in the room about music. So, who would like to start?
I will start.
Okay.
Okay, I should begin with thanking you for a very interesting talk. And then I should proceed with telling you who I am. I am Michael Landzelius, and I am Director of the Urban Safety and Societal Security Research Center here in Gothenburg, which is a joint mission by the University and Chalmers. Ylva has decided that I today represent the university, Chalmers. And it's kind of fitting because I am presently actually hired by Chalmers, by the university, whereas last year I was hired by Chalmers. So it works. Formally I am actually from the university, but the center is the joint mission. The center encompasses everything from urban safety and societal security issues. So it spans from everything from the citizens' experience of urban safety and security issues to internal security in computers and different kinds of technical issues. We have about 15 departments involved in research, and I have about 140 researchers at the University of Chalmers on my sending list. So it's kind of an ambitious project to try to tackle urban safety and societal security from all kinds of angles. And it's basically down to researchers what happens, because I'm a broker. I'm not doing research myself. I'm a broker. I'm trying to build projects. I'm the spinning web in a sense. But it's a difference. What made Ylva invite me to this, I think, is that she knows how issues of societal security borders on long-term sustainability issues. We work a lot in relation to and with the Swedish Civil Contingencies Agency, and they address these long-term issues of the longevity and the maintenance of critical infrastructures, for example, which is huge issues in modern society, and critical independencies, as I mentioned in the coffee break here, and issues of pandemics and issues of food crisis and so on and so forth, and the kind of cascading effects of how one issue of this kind, like food crisis, could lead to food riots in Gothenburg a week after, or we had supply problems or something, or how a simple computer component from somewhere across the world is not distributed to a critical infrastructure system in Sweden, and we suddenly don't have any internet working or whatever. That's the kinds of issues that obviously relates to some of these long-term also sustainability issues. There are these interconnections which I find interesting, and which you also mentioned, of course, in your talk, that are many of these developments that you address, you also lead to, as you mentioned, you said crises, you said conflicts, and so on and so forth. And that's where it can kind of turn into security issues. What I find interesting is this shift in discourse with regard to these issues, because in recent years we have seen food supply problems, we have seen energy supply problems, we have seen water supply problems, we have financial systems problems, and so on and so forth. Related to some of these things, we have migration flows that are increasing, and the security discourse is kind of colonizing all these issues. So you can see some kind of convergence between security research in the long-term perspective, so to speak. I mean, when you think of security in the long-term perspective and the discourse on sustainability. And I've talked with this also with the Swedish Civil Contingencies Agency and other funding authorities, and they find this an interesting topic in the But it's also kind of disturbing, I think, and that's maybe what I would like to ask you some questions about, because we also have, of course, and particularly for social sciences, the kind of problematization of this whole kind of securitization drive and process. And what does it mean when these problems are addressed from the perspective of security? Because then you also immediately have to think in terms of what kind of security, for whom, for what, when and where. So, post-food security are we to protect? What impact will it have to safeguard various kinds of critical infrastructures? I mean, now we have the post-Snowden issue, of course, how we police the internet, but should we police energy supply places? What does it mean to secure energy flows? Which actors should get access to this energy? So, and that's maybe my first question to you would be about those kinds of issues, because I'm very sympathetic to your position and what you said, but I also feel that there are these very clear and not necessarily immediate, but they could be much more immediate than we think, the kinds of immediate social tensions and problems that these issues relate to, and that can be the effect of some changes. I'm thinking in terms of, and to what extent, I'm thinking in terms of the sustainability concept and the notion of, of where this tripartite division in terms of environmental, social, and economic sustainability. But are they generically dependent upon one another? Or is it just an ad hoc policy construct to say that they are? Because in some ways I think that we can think in terms of environmental sustainability, which is in some ways most of what you address, and you partly address it also to thinking in terms of other kinds of economic forms, possibly, I don't know, but you're mostly into the problem of the limits of the earth. But in terms of politics and in terms of the securitization process, I think that we could well imagine a very different kind of political regime. So one does not have to have social sustainability in the sense that we think of it in terms of democracy, in terms of the popular influence on policies. It could well be a fascist dictatorship that runs the earth efficiently. And we could kill off millions of people. And that would be a way of solving some of the problems. I mean, there's no guarantee that there is the kind of generic connection between the three terms. And that, I wonder how you would think about that and what kinds of models you would have to address those issues. There could be very real issues in a short time, and in some ways already are an issue if you think of food crisis in Africa and so on and so forth. Whose responsibilities are we talking about, and who are affected?
Can I make a response? Or,
Yeah.
Because it's that's great remarks. I think, for me that's maybe even more important than the whole ecological issue are the social issues. Originally, it's sort of the concerning the sustainability discourse comes from ecological concerns, but increasingly we see that the social is more and more important. And what you pointed, this whole security paradigm. Ulrich Beck, the sociologist, wrote about it in terms of the risk society that we are, and this I see really as one of the elements of this period of modernization, that we think in terms of efficiency and control and being able to manage things. So the security paradigm and discourse I really interpret as this crisis management response. So something happens, and our collective reflex is more control. And the paradox is that that reflex, which has been building up for years or decades, in itself is creating conditions for a system disruption. So, in a sense, this creating more control and policing more will also trigger the counter forces and make the system more vulnerable. And the interesting thing is that we think a lot of, in terms of security, of preserving the systems of provision that we find increasingly unsustainable. And it also, and why I also really agree that the social component is important, because we do a lot of projects on social resilience in neighborhoods and in cities, where this exactly is the question: energy poverty, access to healthy food for good prices, and so on. And what you see there is that as part of modernity in the welfare state, people are in part enslaved in the system, or they have come to their consumers within these systems. So they expect the provision of food and energy at cheap prices to continue. And on the professional side, this is our reflex. We need to ensure provision of food or energy, and this is the reflex. The alternative transition approach would be to rethink what resilience is in social systems, which also has to do with diversity, with sort of decreasing the vulnerability of these global, connected, highly vulnerable systems, and how to break through this dominant discourse of security as something that can be enforced and be implemented top-down and associated with all these control mechanisms. So it's in part also creating this plan B here in terms of distributed production and consumption, creating the capacities and the abilities and the networks at the local scale that people can self-organize part or socialize part of the economy, that they can share things, and this is exactly what you see emerging. So we would call these niches of urban farming, of sharing networks, of collective commuting, of decentralized energy, of complementary currencies. But this is not at all part of this discourse of social security. I feel that this is really dominated by still sort of the idea of we're entering an era of massive conflicts that requires a hugely coordinated institutional security response, and then it's you get different kind of interpretations. One is that's going to be sort of a bureaucratic monstrosity that will never work, and it's going out of hand, and it's going to control our everyday lives, policing the internet. And the people that are becoming depressed by that, they think, okay, then we need an enlightened dictator or an eco-fascist, or to enforce and to put the boundaries into, but that's also not a feasible model. So I think what I see emerging is a much more distributed and hybrid and diverse way in which we organize the provision of the social goods in society that could lead to a sustainability transition, but that's not happening automatically. So this discourse is very strong, the institutional reflex is very strong, and the dominant response is still more control. So what I think is that not only should we think about how these alternatives could be accelerated, but also look for sort of the counter effects of this dominant control reflex. So it's going to cause more Snowdens, more crises, more collapses. There's going to be instabilities and problems with provision of foods because of an outbreak of a disease, or so the vulnerability of the system. You can increase the security and the control and on, but the connectedness and the sort of the vulnerability of this system is inbuilt. So it's inevitable that it's going to open up. The question is, are the alternatives strong enough? And I think that also requires at a more strategic level, we would say arena level, debate on an alternative social security discourse, which is much more diverse, sort of interdisciplinary, decentralized, multidimensional and so on. But for me, the main thing why I think it's a very valuable point, and very relevant and very close to the ecological debate, because in fact it's now, it used to be a long-term thing, sustainable development, but it's becoming more and more short-term concern. So, and that is expressed in social conflict and floodings and energy outage shortages, or and that's exactly the things you are looking at. Also here we need some kind of bridging idea of debate, or
I could go on.
yeah, me too. Sorry.
I think we all could go on for hours. Okay, my name is Björn Sandén, and I'm then representing Chalmers here then.